Hey, this is Dabo Fett again. So today's video actually has a little bit of a topic. I'm not just gonna be like, hey, this is what I like, and well, it's kind of be like, this is what I like and this is what I use about it. But this is gonna be more informative of how I use them. I mean, everyone knows how to use a fucking knife, right? I haven't done my flashlight videos yet, but again, I assume most people know how to use a flashlight and applications of them. Uh, So what I wanted to cover in this video are some of my favorite watches that I use on a daily basis and what I use them for, because a watch to me also has to be multifunctional. I don't carry them for just time. I use them for multiple reasons, and partly, I know it's weird, some of these skills I learned from work. I used to work at a TV station as master control operations, and in that job, it was very dedicated on time. I needed to either start recordings on the dot at set times throughout the day, or I needed to get certain things edited and in the computer by certain times a day. And so watches have always been very important to me. And like I said, for my needs, I need them to do a couple of other things than to just represent time. And it still represents time, but just not in the time of day sense. So one of my favorite ones, well, two of my favorite is this guy, which I already did a video on, just describing the watch, and this guy. So this looks like a G-Shock, but it's actually an off-brand called Armatron. I got this at a Burlington for like 12 bucks. This one I got at a Fred Meyer's for like 12, 13 bucks. Um, these two do the same functions. These two differ in a little bit of ways. And they're both just as important. They just do different things. Um, there are qualities that I wish I could Frankenstein these two together and make them into one watch. And these two have the same functions, just different looks. So, do I want to look casual and tactical, or do I want something a little more fancier? Um, so let's get into it. This watch, if I want to look fancy, I probably use the most. The one thing I wish this one did that this one does is have a date. Again, like I said, I work in a retail store doing uh, the outdoorsy stuff. I sell guns and knives and fish and game stuff. So when I'm doing fish and game work, filling out paperwork for people, fishing licenses, hunting licenses, it's nice to know the date, because I can never retain that shit. I could look at my watch like 13 times a day and still not know what the fucking date is, because I'm an idiot. But anyway, this one I like for. I kind of use it, like I kind of touched on this in the video, is I use this as a timer. If you see, this thing has a movable bezel around the outside. This one also has the military time on it too, but I don't really use that. Japanese movement, quartz glass. It does scratch a little, but I've had no major issues with it. It still works after about a year. I'm not sure what kind of battery it has. I haven't looked in it. But anyway, so this movable bezel, if you see this triangle here, it's also known as some people as a dive watch, because it gives you increments of time. And what I use this for mainly is a timer. So like if I'm at work, if I'm just taking a 15-minute break, or a half hour break, or a half hour, an hour lunch, and I want something without pulling out my phone and starting the timer, I can just use this bezel. As you see, I line it up with the minute hand, and on this bezel, like I just pointed out, the increments of time. If it moves to here, it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15, blah blah blah. And the other nice thing about this is I walk to work or jog to work sometimes. And when I first started walking to work, I wanted, before I knew how long it took me, I wanted something to measure my pace. And that was the perfect thing for this bezel, was I would time myself in 15-minute increments. So I would set this to the minute hands, start walking at my normal pace, and then I would watch my my watch in 15-minute increments, and then from there I was able to learn my pace. And from there I was able also to learn how far I could walk and guesstimate how long it would take me by looking at certain landmarks. And I can know off the top of my head, hey, I can walk that far in 10 minutes, 15 minutes, blah blah blah. And that's what I loved about this watch and this bezel, is that I use this timer for a lot of different things, even outside of work. Like I said, tracking pace. If I'm going to work out and I only want to be there for 2 hours or an hour, depending if I have something to do that day, I'm able to track time with the bezel and still have a classy looking watch. So when I'm not using the bezel, I would just leave it at noon. Um, just because I like it for looks that way. And the other nice thing about this too is, if you're not the biggest on analog watches and you're like, I don't know how to tell time on an analog watch, this one will also tell you that the 1 is 5 minutes, 2 is 10 minutes, 15, blah blah blah. So you can look at your watch and not have to try and figure out, if you're new to analog watches, and not be like, I don't know how to fucking read this thing, you know. Like if you don't have the 15 minutes increments memorized, like 15, 30, 45 an hour. So this is a nice way to kind of keep pace with that. This watch I really like, again, because of the date. If I need to keep track of the date, I will definitely use this watch. Um, Another thing, I prefer an analog watch. If I can, I like an analog digital mix. Because here in Alaska, when it comes to fall and winter, it gets darker a lot earlier. Like a lot earlier. Where in the summertime, it's almost never dark. So if I'm ever out in the world, or walking around town, or going on a walk or a jog, and it happens to get dark out, if you can see that green tint to it, this watch lights up, which kind of excludes the needs of something like these two, which I do like the the digital backing of something like that, or sometimes a full digital. But I really like something like this, where I can still keep an analog watch. Also Japanese movement. This one's the Timex Forester. Um, this one came with a different nylon strap. I just like this. I just like the NATO bands. They're easier to maintain. If it gets dirty, smelly, you just take the loop off here, feeds through here, take it off, throw it in the washer, and it's done. You just wash it, and yeah, and then you just put it back on. They're interchangeable through whatever watch, just as long as they're the length. But yeah, I like this one for the light up and for the date. If this one lit up and had the date, oh my god, I would be in heaven, watch heaven. I know, weird, right? So these two watches, the big difference on these two is, again, this one has an analog face. So again, the reason I like the digital backing is, if it's dark out, I can see the time, can see the seconds. This one even does the day of the week and the date. This one, if I need a timer, I'm pretty sure you all know how digital watches work. You hit this button here, and I have a timer, a stopwatch. So yeah, so like I said, I really like to be able to track time depending on what I need. If it's tracking a lunch, tracking a break, trying to figure out my pace that day, if I'm running and I want to beat a certain time, something like this, some way to track time is amazing. So like I said, this watch and this watch has almost the same functionality. It's just that this one doesn't have an analog face. So this one, tells me the day of the week here. We have the date here, which just tells you the day. You have to keep track of the month. Time, seconds. We got the light here, or sorry, the illumination here, mode here, start and stop. So this one's kind of different from a lot of analog watches and button functionality. They're kind of mixed up. So that was a little bit of a learning curve for me, but I still love the watch. Urban Camo. I'm a big fan of Urban Camo. I'm usually not a fan of these rubber bands just because they get stinky and gross, and I like to be able to take off and clean them somehow. But this one's been holding up all right. I don't really mind the bands on this one so much. I haven't had any issues with stuff build up or grossness getting in there. And yeah, so with the stopwatch, I get the same functionality. With the light, I get the same functionality. It just doesn't have an analog timer, which I wish I had an analog face on this. The one thing I have thought was interesting about this watch, because I'm assuming it has some kind of polymer glass piece on the front, just like this guy. It's some kind of plastic, because it takes abrasion really easily. I mean, this is a very scuffed up watch. I wish this bezel was raised up over it with how soft the face is. This one is the same. It has a really soft face, and as you can see, there's a couple scuffs and scratches, which I thought was interesting, because if you see how deep this bezel is, I don't understand how things get in here. But like I said, I work in retail. I'm pretty much just like a sales clerk. So I don't know how I beat the shit out of my hands and my watches, but I'm always having scrapes and bruises and like scratching up this guy. And I don't know how I'm so hard on myself in these watches, especially when I don't have a very physical job. But yeah, so like I said, somehow I got in here and I got some abrasions, some scratches. So that's some things with this. Is, though it's been pretty durable so far, this is a very soft piece. I'm assuming some kind of plastic, some kind of polymer, and it takes scratches very easily. And that's the only complaint I have about this guy so far, is just that it takes abrasives really easily. We have our co-host Bob again, just chilling, hanging out, doing his thing while I'm sitting here talking about random shit. But anyway, I hope you liked this video. I hope you found it a little informative for why I like watches, why I wear watches. They're a little bit of aesthetics too, I'm not gonna lie. I kind of match them to my outfits or the job and what I'm doing that day. But these are some of my favorite watches, and these is the reasons why I wear a watch, why I like to have a watch. Mainly because I'm lazy as shit. I just don't like pulling out my phone, hitting buttons, trying to wake it up. And not if you do this, that's cool. You can do that. It just, I feel like I'm being unprofessional at work when I pull out my phone for just checking the time. And yeah, it's just my thought. Like I said, it's me. Like, if you do that, that's cool. Do what you do. But yeah, so this has been my video on watches. So as usual, wherever you are in the world, good evening, good afternoon, or good night, or good morning. I hope you have an amazing week, an amazing day. Have a good one. This is Dave Beaufet signing off.